I actually have like most of the comments in English, but today when I was checking, lots of it was in like German.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've had a couple.
Yes.
A couple of people mention that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mine. I opened it up. It was in English. The only thing I had to change was the units from feet to metric.
When I open settings now, like my language was Dutch actually, but still like most of the commands and language was English.
Huh? That's weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm thinking the whole thing was probably in Dutch, and maybe some of the words were just the same. I don't know. I don't know Dutch though.
When you install it in the beginning, lots of like when I install it, like there is some things you need to click and they're in Dutch, so I just click it and like download it.
Huh? That's weird.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
if you can change it to English at the very top, and even if it's in Dutch, the edit's the second word over, and then the language is always the top setting. So
Yeah.
I actually changed mine to French, just kind of to try it out. And then I guess I knew enough French to find the language again and change to English. But yeah, hopefully everyone can at least even if the word language is in a different language, it's hard to understand. It should be the very first
The first one, yeah.
list. So hopefully everybody can get that one. And then you of course want to make sure that you have right-handed traffic because we're not driving on the left side of the road. Around here.
Only the analyze method and signals, I have it like in Dutch, so I just looked where there is number 6 and click it, and that's it.
Oh, that's really weird.
Yeah.
Now, Montaha, when you click OK, and then when you open it again, you will find it all in English.
Okay, let me check. Yeah.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll give extra marks if anyone can use Vistro completely in German.
That's fun.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide, but I am going to show you guys how to do this in Vistro. Okay, so we're going to, and I don't need anyone to do this yet. I'm going to show this to you in a minute, but once I get into it and share my screen, we're going to enter the lane configurations from assignment 1. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I am going to open up Vistro myself. All right, I'm just checking the chat for a second. It looks like there might be some issues with Vistro. Hopefully most people can open it up. If not, this is going to be recorded, so you can go through it again. But also maybe just watch what I'm doing now, and that will probably help you out for doing it in the future. So I'm going to share my screen again, and hopefully everybody can see it now. So don't worry about anything that's on the right. On the left, you have a map of North America, basically. And this map isn't something that's mandatory, but it is something that's kind of helpful. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to leave it up to you guys if you want to do this, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to start zooming in towards Ontario. And then when I get close, I'm actually going to zoom into Brantford because I found an intersection in Brantford that is actually very similar to our sample intersection. So this isn't mandatory, but anybody wants to do this. I'm going to zoom into the area of Henry Street and Wayne Gretzky Parkway. And there's this intersection right here. There's actually a Tim Hortons and a Lowe's home improvement store here. This intersection is very similar to the one that we did for the assignment. So once I do,
sorry, it's Henry Street and
this one doesn't really have a name. It's like a commercial plaza, but it's just east of Wayne Gretzky Parkway. So Wayne Gretzky Parkway is probably the biggest intersection within Brantford, so it should be not too hard to find. It's just a little bit south of the 403. So once you've found this intersection, you can basically add a signal here. And the way you do that is this top button here says signalized intersection. If you were to right click on it, or sorry, if you click this little arrow button, you could actually add like an always stop or a roundabout. But by default, if you just click on the signal, and then you can place it where you want. So I'm going to replace it right here in the middle of the intersection. So let me know when you guys have added an intersection.
Can you please like repeat where that location is?
Oh.
Like how can we just type it on the map and find it, like, or we need to go?
You know what? I haven't tried. I don't think you can type it in. If you don't find it, it's okay. It's basically Henry Street in Brantford, just east of Wayne Gretzky Parkway. But again, it doesn't really matter if you have this exact location. I'm just doing it because it's a similar location.
Okay.
You can really put it anywhere you want in the map. If you want to model something in Mexico, then by all means, that's fine too.
Okay, thanks.
The map's not going to change in the analysis. It's just a background. So maybe I'll let everyone know if you're still working. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll move on to the next step. Oh, okay. Is anyone else having that issue?
Mine's just not letting me download it anymore. The license expired, it says.
Ooh, okay. So I downloaded it about, I'm going to say, more than a month ago when I was confirmed that I was teaching this class. So I haven't had any issues with it since. I opened it up. I changed it to, I think, metric, and then I haven't done anything since. It seemed to open for me. But if there are a bunch of issues, then I can ask Craig to look into that. Okay, so once you've added this intersection, you'll see that it by default has these 4 legs. Oh, you know what? I think I added a roundabout, didn't I? I probably did somehow. Anyways, I want to add a signal, not a roundabout. Oh no, sorry, that's just a dot. My mistake. So once you've added the signal, you'll see that you can just drag these legs. So you can just kind of drag them to where you want them. You can drag this one. This intersection here does not have the 4th leg built yet. So if you wanted to, you could just right click here, delete leg, but I'm not going to delete it because our sample intersection had the 4th leg. So I'm just going to put it there, and you'll see here that you can turn and rotate things as well. So if you want to, you can make this curvy. Either way, it's not going to affect your analysis, but it's going to make it look more like the real intersection. So just note that you can kind of click in the middle here, and you can drag. Whoops. You can make it go longer. You can make it go sideways. You can make it go. You can really make it do whatever you want, really. So that's the first step, is adding the intersection. And once you add the intersection, you'll see this window pops up asking you for all this information. So you can name your intersection if you want. So I could call this Jeff's intersection. You put notes in there if you want. This is where the HCM 6th edition pops in. You can change it to one of these other options if you'd like. But I mean, I think for the classes I'm going to do, and for all the assignments I'm going to give you, I think we should stick with the 6th edition. That's the standard way of analyzing stuff. And then here you have names. So this is where you'll see the arrows here: northbound, southbound, eastbound, westbound. You can put in the street names if you want. So for this case, north and south don't really have street names, but I could put in the street name for east and west. So in my case, this is Henry Street. So I can just type in Henry Street. And I can put Henry Street here. Again, not going to change your capacity analysis, but it is going to help you on printouts.
Jeff,
Yeah.
the table shows northbound and southbound, but actually the image is the direction is like northwest or whatever. So we don't have to bother ourselves with this, right?
No. So if you click on northbound, I think there's the, oh, maybe not. If you drew the intersection on an angle, it might say northwest, southwest, things like that. And then I think you can, I have to try it out, but I think you can default to change it from northwest to maybe northbound. I think it's easier to have it north, south, east, west, opposed to have it like northeast,
Yes.
southwest, but it's up to you. It's not going to make a difference.
Okay.
You can click these little check marks here to show your street name if you want to. Oh, I don't see it. I think it will show up in a. All right. While we're in the map view, there's some options up here as well. You can actually zoom in and zoom out of your intersection using this button here, this little slide. Don't zoom out too far though, you might lose yourself. You can show the entire network. So you push this, it's going to kind of zoom into your network. So my network right now is one signal, but if you had more, it would show them all. And then you can use, of course, the rectangular zoom, or you can use your scroll button on your mouse to move that around. And one thing that's handy that I'll show you something else that's handy in a minute, is this little measuring tool. All right, let me know when, is anyone having issues putting just a typical intersection on the map somewhere? All right, I'm going to assume that is no. So I'm going to move on to the next step. That's going to be the lane configuration. So if you click on this lane configuration, I'll start with northbound. You got a few different options. You can pick a lane configuration that's already down here. So in this case, I'm going to have 2 left turn lanes and then 1 through and a through right. So the closest, so there's nothing in here with 2 lefts, but the closest thing is a left, a through, and a through right. So if I select that option, I then have the option to add another left turn lane here. Or I can just pick these numbers at the top to actually add what my configuration is. So hopefully everybody can try that out. Oh, sorry, northbound. Sorry, disregard what I just said. I was looking at the configuration for eastbound. Northbound would just have basically that. Southbound, the same thing. Eastbound is what I was referring to. So we can add a left turn lane like that. And then westbound is going to be this arrangement right here. So we can click OK. And that's basically what our intersection looks like. You can, of course, drag this intersection around to try and make it lined up better if you want. All right. Anyone having any issues with adding lanes? All right, so I'm going to pull my PowerPoint for a second. Oops. So the next thing we're going to do here, can everybody see my screen right now? The tree movement count?
Yes.
So what I want everyone to do is enter in these terrain movement volumes into our VSTRO model. You can ignore the pedestrians for now. So you're basically just looking at, I'm sure everyone here has seen a tree movement count before. You're looking at the 400 for the left turn, the 1000 for the through, etc. So you want to put in these 12 different volume scenarios, and this is what I have representing the AM peak hour. So I'm going to close this again for a second. So you can either start whatever direction you want. So in this case, I'm going to put in, you're going to want to put the volumes into the base volume input. So this is 50, this is 50, this is 50 as well. And I know this becomes complicated unless you have multiple monitors. I actually just wrote the numbers down on a piece of paper so I could see them. All right, so I've got some volumes in here. You'll see the total analysis volume here is the exact same as our base volume. There's a section on this up here. It's called trip generation, trip distribution, trip assignment. It's kind of something you'd use if you're doing like a transportation impact study. You could actually add in these different scenarios here development volume, and then it would actually take your total analysis volume and update that field. But we're not going to be doing that in this class. All right, anyone having any issues inputting volumes?
I just finally got Vistro uploaded.
Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes to open it up. Just let me know when you want me to move on. Well, the name doesn't really do too much, so I would skip that. But no, I have not had an issue with that. Yeah, just leave it for now. That's really not an important thing. Once we start doing reports and things like that, it's nice to have the report say this is Henry Street at whatever street. So it's just a nice thing to have, but it's not going to change any analysis or anything. And again, I apologize if I'm rushing through this stuff. I want to get through it before my voice goes. And it's really hard when you're staring at a computer to have any idea how everyone's kind of going with the inputs. Much easier in front of the class when you've got it on a huge projector and you can kind of see if people are busy inputting stuff or not. All right, so while people are kind of finishing up, below that you'll see the lane width. We'll talk about that in another class, but the lane width does slightly change your analysis. So if you want to get into very detailed analysis, you might want to actually measure your existing lane widths. 3.65 is a little wide. The average left turn lane probably that you'd see is probably more like, well, sorry, in this case, this is just a through lane, but a lot of times you'll see left turn lanes might be more like 3.25 meters. You might see a typical through lane somewhere around 3.5 meters. So you can change that stuff if you want, but again, not going to make a huge difference at all. Again, you can also click on Edit, Global Settings, and you'll see where you can start changing all kinds of the default values, things that you would put in all the time. So there's lots of stuff you can change here. You can either change it in here and click OK, or you can just change it per lane. underneath the lane width, you have the number of lanes in the entry pocket. So you'll see for north and south, there are no auxiliary lanes, so that's not needed. But for eastbound here, you'll see that there's one lane shown, but we have dual lefts. So if I wanted to show that both lanes are introduced, I would just change this number to 2. So I change that number to 2, and boom, I've got, I'll zoom in here for a second. I've now got 2 auxiliary left turn lanes shown. And once you guys enter in the number of auxiliary lanes, you then enter in the entry pocket length. So that's the same as the storage length. And I mentioned about this little measuring tool. The one thing that's kind of cool about this measuring tool is you could, for example, if I zoom out a little bit here, if I was to move this, let's say I move this over for a second. You could actually use your measuring tool and actually go, okay, this lane is this many meters long. It's pretty blurry actually when I look at it, probably really blurry for you, but it's just something you could use to help. So you could say, hey, this lane is, let's say 56 meters long. But might be something that you'd be better off doing in Google. I see Benji raised his hand.
Sorry, I just had a question. Are you able to maybe hide the intersection so you can measure, or is that you just have to like move it over to the side of it?
Good point. I think there's something you can do. Just give me 2 seconds. So I'm just going to throw in here as an example. You can type in 50 meters here. Oh, I just typed in 60. And then this one, let's say it's 50. I can type in 50. What you can do here is, let me just find this option. I've used it before here. There's an option to change the opacity where you can actually make things easier to see. I'm trying to figure out where that. Here it is. If under Internet Map, you can actually change the map to make it, let's say, whoops. You can kind of make it less bright. And then let's see here. So this has a Bing map. I guess you could change it to this. But I don't think you could actually, you might want to do the measuring before you actually draw the intersection. Because I don't think you can get rid of the intersection once on top.
Sir, so if you actually just go back to where you were again, and then you select My Network instead, and then you just bring that down, you can see everything.
Oh, there you go. All right, I'm going to let you teach the next part then. You're already more advanced than me here. No, okay, good point. I didn't even notice that when I was playing around. But yeah, if you want to, you can, I guess, blur that. What I did actually is I actually just picked up the intersection and, oops, I think I just kind of moved it around. But yeah, certainly any way works if you want to do some measuring, or you can just measure off of Google Maps on a second screen. All right, I'm going to change that back. That is good to know. I'm going to make mine brighter. All right, if everybody has kind of mastered that, there's the option, of course, to add a median. I don't think it changes anything with the analysis, but if you want to add a median, you can. There is a median in this case. Then once you add a median, you can ask how long it is, how wide it is. Of course, this is really not making much of a difference, but I'll just put 1 meter wide median in here. It's really just making it look more like your intersection. A lot of the stuff doesn't really change the capacity. The speed limit, if you want to, and you know you can add speed limits. The speed limits aren't going to change much until we start dealing with coordination. Until then, they don't mean much, but if these are 50K roads, then you can certainly add 50K in, or you can go to the network settings and change that. grades, if you wanted to, you could add in a lot of these other options here. I'm not going to go over today because they're quite advanced, but you could start adding all kinds of features here. You'll see there's lots of different options. A lot of the stuff you could spend a lot of time entering stuff, but it's not going to make much of any difference in your analysis. Like this curb present, I don't see how adding a curb would really change anything here. So you can change your radiuses, but a lot of these options, what they do is they just make the intersection look more like it does. Especially if you're showing this maybe to somebody who's not in the traffic engineering field, you're maybe showing it as a presentation, you want it to look as close to the real road as possible. So that's why you'd start putting in a lot of these options here. You can see the crosswalk width here defaulted at 2.44 meters. Generally, you're going to see probably 3-meter crosswalks. So if you wanted to, you could change it to 3. But again, it doesn't make much of a difference. Just makes them look a little bit wider. If you had a right turn channelized island, you would select this. We don't, but I'll just show you as an example. If we added one for northbound, that's what it would look like. And then you can start changing how the island's controlled. So we've got a signal. Most of the time there would be a yield, right? Just from normal experience, it'd be a yield, and you could actually change your radius. If it was a really big island, you could, let's say, make this 30 meters, and you'll see it gets bigger. So we don't do that in this case, but that's just an option for you. So that is almost everything from this screen here. So once you have filled in this screen to your satisfaction, in this case, we're mostly just adding the volumes here. We can go to the next screen here, which is traffic volumes. So this here is where you can add adjustments to vehicle volume. One thing that's important that I might show on future assignments when we get it into more complicated things is you'd add the heavy vehicle percentages. So these would be a percent. So if I give you a number, you'd have to convert it to a percent, or if I give you a percent, you just add it. 2% seems to be standard. If you thought you maybe had higher volumes for some, you could raise them up if needed. So there's an example, I could put 4%. So you put this in per movement. Growth factor, only something you're going to use if you're going to be looking at future volumes. You're doing maybe some complex analysis of what the intersection will look like in 10 years. And then this TIA stuff, all to do with traffic impact studies. So we won't be touching on this. But you can see here, you can make your life easier if you're doing a traffic impact study by entering all your volumes in here. This would be if you're maybe, let's say, developing this part of the of land here to the south. You may want to add some of this stuff here, and you can keep track of it then. Saves you from having to use a different program or an Excel spreadsheet to calculate that. So we generally won't be touching much of this. Heavy vehicles are important. You'll see right turn on red. So by default, right turns on red are usually allowed, but if you wanted to, you could change that. Unlike Synchro, V-Star is a little different. It actually has where you can actually add the right turn on red method. So this would either be an absolute number or a percentage. I think in general, where I might ask you to, in some cases, fill in these, but if you don't know, then you probably want to just leave this blank. So in here, if I wanted to, I could put that 50% of right turns are done on red. And 50% of 50 vehicles would be 25 vehicles. So that's where it's calculating that from. And what it's done now is it's taken my total hourly volume for my analysis down to 25. It's going to assume that 25 turn right on red. So it's only going to analyze 25 vehicles in my capacity analysis now.
It will analyze the 50% going on red, or?
Yep. Yep. So we would analyze 50% of vehicles turning right on red.
Okay. What if we didn't specify? What if we say that all of the right turn are going in the normal signal timing?
Then you would just not fill out any of that information. So if I asked you to do an assignment, I would kind of tell you to fill that out. So if I don't say anything, or if you don't know, then you would probably just leave it as nothing. And then if you maybe see that there are some issues with your model, you might want to calibrate it by going back and adding some of that stuff in.
Okay.
But by default, you can just leave it blank. That's what be the same for a lot of the stuff I go through. Like there's so many options. You could spend hours in putting all this data, but a lot of the data you don't know. So you just leave it blank unless you actually know of a more realistic number. Peak hour factor, I think you guys have probably all used this term in previous classes. So the peak hour factor are basically, you would use that to show that there would be some peaking. So a peak hour factor of 1 means that there's no peaking. Everything, all the vehicles and all the volume within the hour is all constant. So I may ask you to use a peak hour factor. So you can either do a peak hour factor by movement. So the common peak hour factor that was a default in Synchro was 0.92, I think. So again, I would probably ask you to put in whatever you want. So if you're going to change them all to 0.92, you could do that in the global settings, or you could add a different peak hour factor per movement. So maybe this one's 0.95. If you try putting in, let's say 1.2, it's not going to let you. It shows an error. You can't put a peak hour factor over 1. So you have to change this error and make it, let's say 0.8. Then it will accept it. And then these are just calculations. In general, the stuff that you see that is in basically italics is the stuff that is being calculated for you. So you don't have to enter that information. We'll go over in a couple of classes some of these more detailed stuff, like why you would select the on-street parking maneuver rates, bus stopping. So for now, the only thing you really want to look for on this page is adding in your heavy vehicles, adding in right turns on red if necessary, adding in peak hour factor, and the pedestrian stuff as well. So this pedestrian stuff is, I find it a little bit confusing here. So this is outbound pedestrian volume crossing, inbound ped crossing. So you have to really look at the diagram very closely and see where is that ped volume coming and going from and entering it. So if the northbound left, actually, yeah, so the northbound left, turning left here, you're going to have in and outbound pedestrians, which you don't really know what they are based on the turning movement diagram. So maybe you'd split them in half and you'd put the numbers here. Let me go back to my diagram here. So we had 20 vehicles that looked like they conflicted with this movement and this movement. So that would be the, you can move this over if you want to read all the rest of the words. Yeah, this section is very complicated for what it is. Inbound pedestrian volume crossing the major street.
Jeff,
Yeah.
I don't have anything underneath like this TIA, this right turn on red, the percentage, all of it. Like I can't see it on my screen. Why do you think that is?
Maybe it's hidden, unless you just have to scroll down.
Oh, like there is nothing to scroll down to.
I wonder if
Like I have, the last thing is pedestrian volume, and then before that total analysis, but I don't have that percentage thing.
huh.
And if I hide the TIA demand, I start with other volumes and then future total volume, and that's it. Peak hour factor.
So you
None of
don't
the
have
other
any
stuff.
of this pedestrian stuff at the bottom?
No, I have pedestrian volume. That's it. One thing, 0, 0. On top of that, total analysis volume.
Are you in HCM
50.
6th edition?
Yes, I am.
And you're on Signalize, I think.
And I'm on, yeah, volumes, second tab after intersection.
Okay. Huh. You know what? When we take a break, I'll look into that.
What is that?
I'm not sure why that is. Okay, I'll have to look into that. I don't know why that would be.
Mm.
It's probably something pretty easy that I just can't figure out at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so this is the screen you use to enter in. Again, if you didn't already enter in your vehicle volume, you could also enter your vehicle volumes into this screen as well. So the third step now is the one where I enter the most data. That's the traffic control section. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint for a second. All right, so in this section, you're going to want to add the data that we used for assignment 1. So I posted, in case you may have had some errors, I posted the correct version of it, and then I realized that I had actually made a mistake on it myself, so then I posted another one slightly after that. So probably if you looked at it after about 2 o'clock today, you should have the right version of it. If not, the right version's there now, and you'll have all these numbers here. So you're gonna want to add in to Vistro your control type. So that'd be in this case, you're gonna have a protected eastbound left turn phase. You're gonna enter your green, your amber, all red, walk, ped clearance, and remember to add vehicle extension time. So if you're, so we determined that this intersection was best running semi-actuated. So you're gonna want to add these passage times here. And 3 is the standard default for extension time. That's why I added it in here. So I'll show everyone how to do that in a second. And then once you add this stuff, you want to go through and add that it's semi-actuated. We're going to do time of day pattern isolated. We're going to do ped recall, which is the default for semi-actuated. Max recall will be for the major street. Rest and walk, we want to pick that option as well. And we want to pick dual entry because we're going to have compatible phases being served together. So I'm going to go back to the Vistro model now. And you'll see a lot of these options. So here at the top, you'll see the analysis period. You can change that to an hour. This is giving you just it's starting you off at 90-second cycle length, which is the recommended. You'll see here that this is listed as coordinated. So like I mentioned, you'll want to put that as isolated. We're going to get into coordinated stuff next week. And then you want to change the fixed time to semi-actuated. So I'll give you guys just a little bit of time to do that. And for anyone who's wondering about the pedestrian walking speed, I've noticed that Vistro actually calculates the ped flash and walk time by itself. So as you add more lanes, I think it assumes based on the lane width how long the ped crossing is, and then it actually makes adjustments. But if you know that data, you just want to override it. You can also, I guess, change this to 1 if you want to have it calculate them based on 1 meter per second. So just something to know, but not something you need to use.
It's me, Jack.
Hi.
Yeah, I had the question about the controller ID. It's number 2, right?
Yeah, that number doesn't really mean anything. You can leave that blank.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Oh, something we'll go over this again too, but see this is located in CBD. CBD stands for Central Business District. So I would classify that as like a downtown type core. So if you have this checked on, I think it actually lowers some of your capacity. So if you uncheck this, it probably gives you a little bit more capacity. It's assuming, I think, that if you're in the downtown core, you're going to be driving slower and there's going to be lots of stuff around. So you're going to be, I guess, acting a little bit differently as a driver. And you'll see the priority scheme here, minor, major. Now, in our case, the eastbound and the westbound is the major street. So you might want to change this to major, major, and have these northbound, southbound as the minor street.
Get back up there.
I'm just going to mute myself for a second. I got to Have a couple big sneezes here before I keep talking. All right, I am back. Any difficulties so far?
Jeff, where to add the timing?
That's the next step. If everyone's ready for that, I can go on to that now.
Okay.
So this is probably the most complicated part. You could either, to create your timing, you can either add information to this ring and barrier diagram, which is a little bit difficult, or you can click this button, which is probably going to be one of your best friends, that basically defaults signal timing for you. So if you go to that and you want to do leading left turn phasing, you'd select lead and you just hit the OK button. And once you do that, it will populate some timing for you. Did everybody find that button? It says create default signalization. Alternatively, you could click, and then you'll see here that they put in green times. This the top bar is going to be your total split time. It'll actually show you what it is here. Split is 49 seconds, it says. This split is 31 seconds. So 49 plus 31 is 80 seconds. So that's why you see the cycle length here is 80 seconds. And then down here, this is showing the ped time, I believe. The walk in green, the flash note walk in yellow. And then here we go, you'll have the sequence. So you'll see here, we've got no left turn phasing. So we've got ring 1's using phase 2 and 4, ring 2's using 6 and 8. So that will match the ring and barrier diagram that I've shown you in the PowerPoint, if you want to go back and look at that later. And you'll see these little gray bars, they are barriers. So you take the barrier out, but it's going to screw things up. So I'm going to put the barrier back in. So you can add barriers by clicking here to add a barrier. You can add a barrier here, and then you could actually make some split phasing if you want on the side street. You can also go to this little plus sign. It says signal groups. And nope, put it on my other screen. Oh, okay, I can't move it. When I open the signal groups, it actually pops up on my second screen here, so you guys can't see it. But if you hit this button right here, you can actually add in a signal group, and then if you want to, you can actually add all your information right into this chart. So unfortunately, I can't seem to show that to you guys. But if you can click on this button here, you'll see a window pop up. Because I'm running two screens, it's popping up on my other screen here, and I can't, for some reason, I can't move it over. I don't know why. Oh, I can do this maybe. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So you can basically add a group. So if you wanted to, you could add, maybe someone can answer, what group do we want to use to add the eastbound left turn? What phase number would that be?
Five?
Yes, it was 5. A lot of people answered 1, but the correct answer is 5. So you could actually put in here that this is group 5. And you put that it's in use. Oh, maybe I can't do that yet. Okay, I'm gonna hit OK. You could also, if you want to, type in 5. So 5 would go right here. So you can put in, oh, there it goes. Because I added the signal group, I can now add it in. So I can now add in phase 5. And you'll see that it's now added the left turn phase in here for me. So far, there's no green time. It's just showing that the split is the yellow and the all red. So I got to modify that. But if you wanted to add, let's say, a westbound left turn, there's no option to put in here, but if you go to add the signal group, drag it over again. Sorry, you guys probably don't have to drag it. I'm just doing this because I have 2 screens going. You can add number 1. And then you can enter times if you want. So min green would usually be 5. For phases 2, 4, 6, and 8, usually we use mins of 10. So if you wanted to, you could start filling this section out. 10, 10, 10, 10. But that I think is a harder way to do it. So my advice to you guys would be to just click on this to create default signalization, and then once you do that, you can start entering all your data in. These cells that were gray now turn into black. And the very first one that you're going to come across is the control type. So what is the control type for my northbound left? Any ideas?
Permissive?
Yes, there is. We leave it as the default, which is permissive, because there are no left turn phasing for the side streets. So northbound and southbound stay as permissive. You'll notice when I changed the priority scheme earlier from minor to major, it changed the phase numbers, 4 and 8 to be in the side street. If I change this back to major, let's say. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, I thought it would change this. I guess because it's already done it. But when you first change this, it actually changes your phasing. So I'll leave it as it is. But you can override this. And let's say this was phase 4 and this was phase 8. You can just change them. Simple as that. So what about the eastbound left? What type of control type would that be? Close. Based on the fact that it's dual lefts,
Protected.
we recommended that it was going to be protected. So if you want here, you can select protected. And it automatically puts number 5 in here because phase 5 and phase 2 would go together. So you have all the different options here. If you put a right turn overlap in if you wanted to. So as of the assignment, basically just asked us to put in phase 5, which was a protected left, and that was the only phase that was protected. Everything else was permissive. But if you wanted to add a permissive phase, you could. And then once you put that in, it gives you the option of lead or lag. So for some reason it put lag. So I don't know why we'd want that phase to lag. So I'm going to change it back to lead. It moved it from after phase 6 to before phase 6. So once you guys have done that, you can then fill in this information. Min green. You can leave max green at 30 for now if you want. So fill in the min green, the amber time, the all red time, and leave the split alone for now. Then once you've done that, you can add the extension time, walk time, and ped clear time. So I'm going to start doing that myself. So we said, I think that this one should have a min green of 7, I believe. And you got to make sure too that this is not in the same order as your chart. So don't just go by your chart. You want to actually look at each phase. So if this is phase 4, I think the amber time we wanted was 3.7. Then this one was 4. Oh, sorry, this one was 3.7 as well. 3, 4.2, 4.2. This was, I think, 3.2, 3.2. And as I enter these in, you'll notice here at the bottom, it's adjusting your splits accordingly. So you'll see that as I put a longer yellow value in, this little yellow patch gets bigger, and so does the all red. So I'll keep filling this in here. I think these ones were 2.2s. All right, now you got your split. Leave your split alone for now. vehicle extensions, you can just leave the 3 in here by default. It's going to default on 3. So you're going to want to put a 3 in here for phase 5. And then you're going to want to fill in your walk times. And all right, these were 14, I think. Realistically, I think they'd be a little more than 14 based on the size of my intersection here, but I just gave some random numbers without really thinking. So I'll put them in like this. All right. Okay, I'm going to pause for a few minutes just to make sure everybody can catch up and do this. All right, does anyone have any questions so far? Nothing, okay.
Jeff, for the extension, the extension should be for phase 5 for the protected lane. Why would we added also to phase 4 and 8?
So you don't really need it for phase 2 and 6. So I left it there by default, but if you wanted to, you could zero it out. It's not gonna make any difference though. But because 4 and 8 are running semi-actuated, the time that you serve for the minor street will actually have an extension time. So I would put 3 in for the side street, just because it's semi-actuated. If it was fixed time, then it would be different.
Oh. And how we would know? Just to follow the diagram that you showed us where to mark when it's semi-actuated or fixed?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to share, I was just about to share this anyways. So I think if you guys can see this slide now. So this is our step 4 here. So the actuation type we determined was semi-actuated. So the time of day, pattern isolated, PED recall, default is semi-actuated for major street, max recall is the default for the major street as well. Rest and walk would be for the main street as well. So you'll see that there's these options: PED recall, rest and walk, max recall that you guys filled in on this chart. So I'm going to cancel out this again. So you'll see those same options down here. So here we go, rest and walk. So you can put phases 2 and 6 on rest and walk. You can take off the coordinated part. You can put them on max recall. You can put them on PED recall if you want. You can turn on dual entry for everything, but you don't need to turn on dual entry for that, just for the through movements, I believe. And there's even this option here for detector. So if you want, I mean, if you're getting into some fairly advanced analysis, you can actually select that the side street has detectors and phase 5 has a detector, and you can actually put where they are and how long. So if you put in detector location, I think 0 would be the default. And you'll see this little detector they've drawn here. But for a left turn phase that's running, you could potentially set it back. No, you wouldn't want to set it back if it's fully protected, but these are some fairly advanced options that I'll get into in a couple weeks. But again, they exist. So I'm going to uncheck these for now. So if everybody can kind of go through here and find the recalls that are required for a semi-actuated location and then turn those on. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up another slide here. So once you do that, we're on to step 5, which is the calibration part. So this is the part that's a bit more fun. Entering all the data is a bit, is not necessarily the funnest part of using this, but the fun part is calibrating and adjusting it to get your best results. So before you start doing anything, you want to just kind of do a double check of all your stuff. And this was something I found when I taught this class last year. Sometimes people were entering the wrong data. And if you enter the wrong data, you might not be able to get the answer I want you to get, which could completely kind of screw you up. So you always want to do a quick check. Make sure instead of putting the amber at, let's say 3.7 seconds, you actually put it as 37 seconds, where you're going to have really weird analysis if you do that. So you want to just go through and just double check everything. Make sure the ring and barrier sequence is correct. Ensure your phasing is correct. And then you can actually save your work. This would be a good time to save everything. And you can save things as scenarios. And I'll show you that in a second. And then once we have done that, we're going to check the measures of effectiveness. So we're going to look at what Vistro calls the movement, approach, and intersection results. And then we're going to try optimization. And then we're going to, once we optimize things, have a look at the movement, approach, and intersection results. And if you're seeing that there's any problems, maybe we can fix those problems with adding more phasing. And if we're still having problems after that, maybe the lane configuration is not appropriate for the volumes. So maybe we want to look at, would this model, for it to work better, would we benefit from having an additional lane? So I'm going to go back to the Vistro now. All right. So here it is, your lane group calculations. So here's your cycle length. Currently it's set to 84. We'll look at changing that in a minute, and it's showing your green start and end. So if you want to change the cycle length, there's a few different things you can do. You could type in a new cycle length. You could also create this, you can hit this button again if you want. Select lead again, hit OK. So now this is going to automatically optimize it. There's also the way of clicking this little, looks like a clock button, and you can actually have Vistro optimize it based on your different options here. Do you want to minimize a critical movement? Do you want to balance them based on the VC ratio? And then you can put in here that you're only interested in cycle lengths that are between, let's say, 80 and 100. And then you can click on OK, and it does another slight optimization. So did everybody see where I got those two optimization results? And then if you look here at cycle length, you'll see that it changed cycle length on everything to 100 seconds. And if you go up here, again, change cycle length to 100 seconds. So that is what I think is probably the easiest thing to do. But you're still going to probably want to make minor changes to things once that's done. Yep. Sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to either click on this little traffic signal and hit OK. And it's not going to do anything because I already optimized it. But you can also click on this button here. You can decide to either balance your VC ratios. That's basically balancing the needs of all the different approaches. Or you can click this option, which would minimize the critical movement. So if you have maybe one movement that's operating poorly, selecting this option is going to heavily weight the green time towards that movement. So I would suggest starting with the VC balancing. And then you can do try set if you want to. This will actually experiment with different cycle lengths, but I think it's best just to go between the boundaries. So I changed my boundaries from 80 and I got rid of it to 100 and put it as 90. My only options now are for it to go in an 80 or a 90-second cycle. If I change this step size to 5, then I could analyze an 80, an 85, or a 90-second cycle. So I'll try this out and see what happens. I hit OK, and it has decided to go with a 90-second cycle. So there's a 90 there. There is the 90 right here as well. And if you add up your splits here, where are they? Your split right here. Everything in the side street is both 32. And then the main street shows 15 seconds for the left turn phase, 43 seconds for the opposing through, and then it shows 58 seconds for the eastbound through. So if you took the westbound through, 43, and add 15 to it, you would have 58. So what it's doing is the eastbound stays green while the eastbound left is on. So hopefully that makes sense. And if you take the numbers on this side of the barrier and you add them up, so you have 58, and then you add 58 to this side of the barrier, which is 32. 58 plus 32 equals the 90-second cycle. If you wanted to, you could make this, let's say, 35. So they both change to 35. And it's still showing your cycle length as 90. But if you click on this traffic signal again, it has, okay, it's changed them. So it's liking the 90-second cycle when I hit optimize. Did that help at all? Okay. All right, so let's scroll down here.